first in my talk. So Paul, you can go to the next slide. What we're looking at tonight a little bit of is God's divine doormat. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I like to look at doormats when I go to people's houses. That's why I actually sent a note to a lot of you and said, hey, if you got a really good doormat, let me see it. Here's some. I like that one. Yep, hide packages from the husband. This house runs on coffee and Jesus. I never knew that till 10 years ago when I started drinking coffee. I thought that was a good one for some of my family. If you got dogs, you understand that one, right? Dogs will let everybody know if somebody's in the house. And grandkids are spoiled here. At our house, grandkids are very spoiled. Yeah, I like that one. My family probably doesn't like that one. But, you know, when you're empty nesters, and this one for flying, you know, departures and arrivals, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua. I like that too. Sort of depends on who you are, right? Welcome-ish. Not today, Satan. He's the head of this house. That's my prayer for all of us. True story. True story. God's divine doormat. I don't know if you've ever thought about that before. That's what Christmas is. That's what the manger is. God's divine doormat saying to us, you know what? I want to welcome you into the presence, His presence, Creator God's presence. All are welcome. We got a couple of verses here to look at this idea that all are welcome. Luke 2, verse 10 says, but the angel said to the shepherds, don't be afraid. Now, I don't know about you, but I know if I actually saw an angel, I'd probably freak out. Probably would. And all through Scripture, whenever an angel meets somebody, the angel always says, don't be afraid. It's okay. I got a message from God for you. And the angel says to the shepherds, don't be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be to all people. Now, this first idea about God's divine doormat is that all are welcome. All. It's interesting to me that God announces the birth of the infinite. Oh, yes. Infinite infant, Jesus Christ, to the shepherds. I think I still got that word wrong. To the shepherds. Now, most of the time we think about the shepherds as being you know, they're just shepherds. They're just out working in the field. But do you realize that shepherds in that day were unclean? Shepherds in that day were not supposed to go to the temple. They were not supposed to go to the local synagogue to worship. They were considered dirty and unclean. But who does Yahweh God announce the birth of His Son to first? The shepherds. Who we would say, or the people there would say, they're unclean. They should not be the ones to be invited into the presence of God. But God says, I am going to welcome all people. Shepherds were the first ones. The next one's out of Matthew 2, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. I love the name Bethlehem. It means house of bread. And Jesus at one time says, I am the bread of life. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. During the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. We sing, we three kings. They weren't kings. They were Magi. They were astrologers. Maybe a lot of you know that. Maybe some of you didn't know that. You know, I think of them as kings, but they were astrologers, meaning they studied the stars. They studied the skies. And they went to King Herod, and they were from the east, and they said, where's the one who's been born King of the Jews? We have seen his star. We have come to worship him. The shepherds were unclean. The Magi were foreigners. They weren't Jews. They would not have been allowed into the synagogues to worship. They would have only been allowed in the temple, into the court of the temples, not into the court of the men, nor the court of the women to worship. They were considered unclean. But what does God do? God puts out His divine welcome mat, and He says, come. Whoever you are, come. And I find it interesting with that invitation, because you see, the shepherds, it's believed that the shepherds outside of Bethlehem, which was right close to Jerusalem, these shepherds, we believe, were the shepherds who were raising up the lambs, the sheep, to be used in the temple sacrifice. So we didn't read the words, but when you probably all know the story within this, when the angels say, you will go to Bethlehem and you will find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, we often take that as rags. Friends, it is rags, but I don't know if you know what the rags are from. The rags are from the temple. The rags are from the priest. When the priests were done with their garments and they were worn out, they would tear those rags apart and they would give them to the shepherds, and the shepherds would use them to bind up those new lambs that were born in order to be used in the temple. And it's to the shepherds who are outcasts. Come and see the Christ child. It's to the wise men who were Gentiles, Magi. Watch the stars. And God says, come and see the Christ child. The Apostle Paul says to us in Titus, for the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people. Friends, it is welcome. God's divine doormat is open for any and all to come. And in the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 7, is a great, great book. Last book written in the New Testament, in the Bible. John the Apostle, he says, after this I looked, and there was before me a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. Friends, sometimes we think Christianity is an American religion. Sometimes we think Christianity is all with people that look like you and I. Friends, it is not. It is not. You go around the world, and we have brothers and sisters around the world who look different than we do with color or skin or how they have been raised and whatnot, but if their heart is with Jesus Christ, we are brothers and sisters in the same family. All are welcome. But it's also interesting for the fact that all are welcome, and we come as we are. Come as we are. The shepherds were anywhere from just a couple hundred yards to maybe a half a mile away from the stable. We don't know if it was the cave or a stable in the town of Bethlehem, but they're not that far away. And what do we read? We read that they get up right away and they leave their sheep and they go to the place where the child is. Their journey is short. Come as you are. Now the Magi, their journey took them, we believe, a year or more. Because what we read is when they show up to Bethlehem, they go to the house that Mary and Joseph and the baby are at. And then King Herod has all the children, all the boys under age 2 and younger killed when they leave, because he wants to get rid of this new king. So it's believed that the Magi's journey was much longer. My journey coming to Christ is different than your journey. But as we journey to Christ, we come to him the way that we are. Some of the passages from the Old Testament of Psalms. Psalm 56, bring your tears. The psalmist says, you kept track of my every toss and turn through the sleepless nights. Some of you may struggle with some of these. Sleepless nights, each tear entered in your ledger, each ache written in your book. Bring your tears to Jesus Christ. You bring your fears, Psalm 34. I sought the Lord and he heard me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. Mark says to us, bring your doubts. The father of the child, when the dad brought his child to Jesus to be healed, and Jesus says to him, do you want this child to be healed? And he said, yes, I do, but Lord, help my unbelief. Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. We bring our unbelief, we bring our questions to Jesus, bring our disappointments. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. God's divine doormat says all are welcome. God's divine doormat says to us, come as you are. You don't need to have anything special going on in your life. You don't need to get your life cleaned up in order to come. You come, and then you get your life cleaned up. But also, God's divine doormat says that we enter into his presence. The shepherds. Shepherds hurried off. They left their sheep. They went and they found the baby lying in the manger. They recognized him because of the swaddling clothes that they would wrap the other sheep, the baby lambs in. And they are there and they worship and they leave and they tell everybody about this new child. And the Magi, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. And the Magi bowed down and they worshiped. And they opened up their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Enter into his presence. God's divine doormat is open for all. God's divine doormat says, whoever you are, whatever you got going on in life, whatever messes you've made in life, whatever mess you may be carrying, however dirty you may feel, whatever pain you have, whatever tears you are shedding, whatever doubts you have within your life, come to me, so says his divine doormat, and I will give you rest. And as we come to him, we come and we enter into his presence of worship. John says to us in John 1, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Isn't that beautiful? It's amazing. The infinite God came as an infant to become one of us. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as the only Son from the Father, glory of grace and truth. Friend, God's divine doormat says to us, all are welcome. All can come. God's divine doormat says to us, come as you are. Whatever's happened in your life, come as you are. God's divine doormat says, come and enter into worship. And as we enter into worship, a change will take place. The shepherds left, and they told everybody about what happened. The Magi show up, and they bow down and worship, and they leave, and I know they were changed. When we enter into worship, we come as we are, but we're called to leave changed, walking with the infinite God, the Christ child, the incarnation of Jesus Christ. God's divine doormat says to us, welcome home. There's the beautiful aspect of that last verse up there. If you just go back one slide there, Paul. One slide. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, Jesus Christ says to us, not only, I am the bread of life, but he also said to us, I am the light of the world. I love that. I'm the light of the world. The city that is set on a hillside cannot be hidden, but the light will shine. Friends, God's divine doormat says to you and I, come, you're welcome. God's divine doormat says, come as you are, but then enter into worship and allow God to change your life. Paul and Scott, can you get...